Hi, I'm Dan and welcome to the Airbrush Garage. If you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, thanks for coming back. Today I'm going to be rebuilding my 20-year-old Iwata Eclipse HP CS. I have it for 20 years, as I said, and it's about time that I start putting some new parts in it. And I'm really happy that it lasted me 20 years. I'm going to be bringing up a schematic of the airbrush on the computer and showing you all of the parts that I'm going to be replacing in it step by step. So if you like this type of content, please consider subscribing. Give me a thumbs up. A couple comments would be nice, good or bad. It really helps the YouTube algorithm and help this channel grow. Please don't forget to check out all my Amazon affiliate links down below. With that, let's get started. So before we get started, I just want to let you know that there's 24 total parts that the airbrush consists of and 5 optional parts. I opted to replace 8 of the 24 parts that I feel are the most important. And I will be going over to the computer and showing you a schematic of those parts and where they go before we replace them. All right, so here we are at the computer. We got the schematic up for the Eclipse. This is for all the model Eclipses. All the parts are the same. Today we're going to be obviously dealing with the gravity feed, but the parts as far as what we're going to be replacing is the same for all of the Eclipses. So the first part is going to be, this number 5 is the O-ring or packing head O-ring that goes between the nozzle cap and the body. As long as you don't tighten down too hard on this nozzle cap, that will last a long time. So this is probably the second time only that I'm going to be replacing that. Now, most of your seal, or if not all of your seal, is really created by the compression fitting on this nozzle. It's a brass nozzle. I'm not going to be replacing that today because of the fact I replace that, maybe once a year. I like to replace that. It just gets worn from taking it on and off. So, but I'm going to be replacing this O-ring today, just because I've only ever replaced it once in 20 years. So moving on to number 7, most of the parts that we're going to be replacing today are here in the valve system. 7 is the packing valve O-ring. 8 is air valve guide body. 9 is the air valve piston. 10, air valve spring. 11, air valve guide screw. 13, in which we're going to need the screwdriver for, is the needle chucking set, and it's called a set because it is a brass threaded body with a PTFE. PTFE stands for Teflon insert. That's why it's called a set. And again, that's what we're going to be using the screwdriver for. And then the last thing we're going to be replacing is the needle spring, number 15. Now, this schematic goes real nice with a parts guide, and where I've ordered mine through was Dixie Art. Basically, Dixie Art has a deal just like with a lot of the suppliers. There's plenty out there that have these schematics and these parts lists. I just found this very helpful and the most useful for me, and the easiest, that the schematic on Dixie Art worked very well with their parts list. And you can pick a part, say like 13. It brings it up and gives you your price, and you can just add it right to the cart. I found this list very interactive and helpful between the list and the schematic, and very easy to order. So with that, let's get rebuilding. So the tools we're going to need for this rebuild are a jeweler screwdriver, or this screwdriver here, which is an actual needle nut packing screwdriver, which has basically like a jeweler screwdriver but has a pin on the end of it and helps guide the needle packing nut into the airbrush. A pair of tweezers, an ordinary pair of tweezers, and I'm just going to take a little Ziploc bag to put all my old parts in, because some of the parts are very small and I don't want to lose them. So with that, let's get rebuilding. All right, so let's start by taking the airbrush apart. Take off the back handle. One other tool that we're going to be needing is the wrench. There's our nozzle. Okay, so basically what we have. I'm going to take off the needle nut. This is going to be one of the parts we're going to be replacing, is the spring. We'll take that spring and we'll put it in our bag. There's our O-ring that we're taking off right from the body of the airbrush. It was stuck on there pretty good. We're replacing that one. Bag. I put some of this in a bowl. I soaked the airbrush, and I'll tell you what, look what came out of that thing. I don't know if you guys can see that. Just amazing. And I probably wasn't going to do that, and it forced me to take another step and do that. And I'm really glad I did, because it just really, really cleaned the airbrush out. Now, I will give you a heads up about one thing. Trying to get this valve body out, you got to push it down. You got to go through here, through the top, and push down. Now, the top of what you're looking at when you look in this hole looks exactly like the top of this. So I was trying to push down on that. That was the wrong thing to do, because there's a brass top in there that looks exactly like the top of this, and you can damage that by trying to tap on that or hammer down on it. So after soaking the brush, what I did was I ran a brush down through the hole, and it pushed the body right out. So I looked on YouTube on how to get this body out, and I couldn't find anything. So apparently it's supposed to be as simple as it's just supposed to be able to be pushed out. The key here is you have to know what you're pushing on. And when you look down through this hole, you think you're pushing on the top of this, but you're not. So just keep that in mind. That is a crucial, crucial fact. I almost damaged my airbrush because I didn't know that. So again, I'm learning as I go here too. It's the first time I've ever rebuilt an airbrush from, ground up. All right. So anyway, what was on top of that valve body was this little tiny washer that we're also going to be replacing. And this one's probably still good, but I'm just going to replace these parts to new. Okay. So I'm going to take these two parts. I'm going to put them in my parts bag and get them out of the way. All right. I also soaked, while I was at it, I soaked my nozzle. Okay. And got some debris out of there, even though I usually clean my nozzles thoroughly. And here is the needle chuck with the Teflon or PTFE insert, very small. Now I will say the screwdriver that I picked up, or the needle chucking screwdriver I picked up, didn't quite fit into the slot of the chucking nut. Okay, now it does, and I'll tell you what I had to do. So I used this to furf it up, and I had to take a file and I had to just file down and make that a little bit sharper to get to and be able to engage that slot in the nut. And once I did, it came right out. All right, so I'm going to set this aside. It's amazing with how clean this airbrush should be right now. I'm feeling really good about it. All right, so we're going to start putting this thing back together, just in reverse of what we took it apart. So we're going to start with that valve body. So it's going to be that little rubber O-ring and the valve body itself. Now I can see this might be a little tricky on how to get that little O-ring to seat down in there properly. So I think the strategy I'm going to take is I'm going to lay that down on top, and I'm going to slide my airbrush over it. So hopefully that keeps that all in line. I'm not going to turn that over yet. I think I'm going to take the screwdriver because there's a, it goes to a real tiny hole in there, which this needle will fit into the hole. And I'm just going to snug it in there a little bit. Okay, so I have that in there. And now I am looking at, and I'm referring to the schematic that I have on the computer that I showed you before. So the next one is going to be the air valve piston. Okay, and the little rubber gasket or O-ring that's on it is going to be going up into the brush, into that very small hole in the valve body. You're just going to set that in there like that. Then once you get that on, you're going to go with the valve spring. Slide that over. Once you do that, you have the air valve guide screw. Okay, now what you're going to do is, I don't believe there is a side to this. Both sides are the same. Okay, so this is very small, as you can see. So what you want to do is now there is a hole right here, and you have to make sure that your pin is coming through that hole. Okay, so now you want to get your, if you don't have the tool like I don't, you want to get your tweezers. You want to get them threads started and just get it turning around. Just snug that up. Okay, so now we got the valve body and all of the valve components in there. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the new PTFE chucking, needle chucking nut set in there. Okay. See, this is why I wanted this tool, because I could just set this on here and a jeweler screwdriver, your runners gets falling off. This keeps it nice and secure till I can work it in here. Okay. And kind of feel it and just start screwing, turning lightly, making sure that the threads are good. You're not cross threading anything. Okay, now I just turned it until it stopped. I didn't over tighten it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my needle. I'm going to run my needle down through it. Okay, now I'm actually going to put mine in reverse. Okay, now that actually feels pretty good, because if you over tighten it, you'll feel it, and you're going to squash that PTFE. You're going to insert. So this feels good. It's coming through nice. See it slide like that? It just barely holding it. So I'm very happy with that. Okay, so everything that I've researched, that's the way it's supposed to be. So I'm going to leave that exactly where that is. So next we're going to do, before we go and put our needle chucking guide in, we're going to put our trigger in. All right, so we got the trigger in. Now, I really wish that the design of this, or any airbrush, would make that a little easier. That's tough, especially for an old guy like me, to get that sometimes lined up and get that in there. So, all right, once that's in, we got the needle chucking guide that we're going to put in there. And then we got the spring. Goes over that. And then we got the needle spring guide. Screw down over that. And then we got our nut. I'm going to put on there. going to slip our needle through for the most part. I like to just put it into the cup a little bit. I don't want to stick it out here because I don't run the risk of, when I'm working on the front of the airbrush, of damaging it. We have our O-ring. I think that's the only one we have left. And that is our packing head O-ring. I'm going to slip that over the front. Okay. Got our nozzle that we cleaned up earlier with our restoring solution. And like I said before, guys, this is a compression fitted nozzle with a lot of, I think it's the only one that Iwata makes with this model. All our other models have the threaded, really small type of nozzles. I always liked this one just because you didn't have to deal with the threads, and I thought it was a great idea as far as sealing goes, but apparently they, you know, the other method must be just as good, if not better. So again, I think both methods are good. This one you just don't have to deal with, you know, screwing something on that's really small. So I did like that design. That's always like that about the Eclipse. Now again, I'm just going to hand tighten that, and then when I take this tool, I am really just going to give it, oh, just, I mean, just a snug. You're not going to sit there and wrench on it. Okay. So once that's done, you're going to push your needle all the way forward. And there you have it. Should be as good as new. So I'll fire it up and we'll see how it sprays. All right, so I hooked an airbrush up to my hose really quick just so you can hear and see the trigger action and the air pressure. Works really good. Nice smooth trigger now. The bounce on the trigger feels really good with the new spring. I'm just really happy with it. Honestly, I think I could probably get another 20 years out of this airbrush, and I'm looking forward to it. Love it. All right, well, there you have it. All in all, not too difficult to rebuild the airbrush. I did learn some lessons when I was rebuilding it. The biggest lesson I learned was with that air body valve, or the air valve body, when you're looking down on the top, on how to get that out of there. Soak it and restore. I highly recommend, if your airbrush was, you know, not ever rebuilt, please put it in the restore. That is a fantastic product. When I saw what came out of that airbrush, fantastic. I know my airbrush is clean now. I would say it's just like new. So make sure you get it super clean before you put it all back together, and just take it step by step. It really won't take you that long. I want to say that this whole project, probably in parts, I think cost me about $67. So again, well worth it. Love my Eclipse. So with that, if you like this type of content, please consider subscribing. Give me a thumbs up. Leave me some comments, good or bad. If you have any other tips for viewers out there in your experience of rebuilding an airbrush, please put the comments down below. Comments really help out with the YouTube algorithm and help this channel grow. I really appreciate that. Don't forget to check out all my Amazon affiliate links for all the products I use in this video and all my other videos down below. And with that, we'll see you in the next video.